When a millionaire tried to embarrass a housekeeper, her amazing transformation left everyone sh. Clara gripped the edge of the ornate silver tray, her fingers trembling slightly as she navigated the crowded ballroom. The laughter of the affluent washed over her like a wave, pulling her deeper into the shimmering chaos. Comfortable linen napkins swirled like jet streams, and crystal glasses clinked melodically, drowning her self-doubt in the symphony of wealth. She reminded herself of her son, Jacob, and the future she was building for him. She must look graceful despite the nerves gnawing at her insides. Then, it happened. As she passed a cluster of elegantly dressed guests, one of them Arthur Hawthorne, the notorious businessman with a reputation for arrogance, caught her eye, and an arrogant grin spread across his face. "Hey there, housekeeper. You're spilling some of those overpriced hors d'oeuvres everywhere." He laughed, and his words crashed around her like shattered glass. The heat rose from her chest, spreading to her cheeks. "I'm sorry, sir," she stammered, fumbling to regain her composure as the laughter deepened and echoed in the corners. Her heart sank, a painful reminder of her status, making her want to disappear beneath the elegant decor she was meant to uphold. The humiliation twisted in her gut, as the juxtaposition of their lives shattered her dignity. It was one moment, but it felt like the world had stopped, eyes fixed on her, a spotlight she never wished to occupy. How could someone so wealthy and powerful stoop so low? Why did she let his words sting so much? Clara swallowed hard, forcing a smile even as she felt her identity unraveling like loose thread. She was a provider, a dedicated mother, and yet here she was naked under his judgment. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. After the party, Clara stumbled home under the weight of the evening. The laughter that should have danced in her heart lingered like an echo of defeat. Jacob met her in the hall, his face brightening when he saw her. Yet, his smile only deepened her despair. Was she showing him a woman who fights against a tide of failure or a mother drowning in the shame of her situation? That night, feeling loss wrap around her throat like a noose, Clara reached for the old canvases that had buried themselves in memory and dust. Her grandmother's practiced hands had once danced over the very same fabric, creating beauty with each stroke. In the glow of emotion and suppressed urge to create, she remembered the dream of painting. With a trembling breath, she dipped her brush into vibrant colors, letting raw feelings spill from her heart to the canvas. Little did she know that she was standing at the edge of a precipice. Each stroke would lead her further away from the darkness of his disparagement, forging a path toward an uncharted future. But as she found solace in her art, a shadow loomed, connected as it was to the businessman's twisted laughter. Clara planned to strangle that laughter in her newfound expression, yet the remnants of his scorn tugged at her open wounds like a predator circling its prey. And with the ebbs and flows of color arising beneath her brush, she found herself in a battle of self-worth, questioning if transformation could come from the ashes of humiliation. Clara steeled herself for the clash that awaited. The businessman's bustling world was not done with her yet, and neither was the spark of tenacity ignited within her. The path to her self-reclamation was steep, and at its summit loomed a choice that could either bind her to her past or launch her into the unknown. Each heartbeat reminded her that the storm was just beginning. Clara awoke the next morning with the brightness of the sun flooding through the curtains, casting a warm glow on her canvas. The air felt charged, as though every fiber of her being was urging her to embrace the artistic spark ignited the night before. Yet, amid the excitement lay the lingering shadows of yesterday's shame. The laughter of Hawthorne echoed in her mind, taunting her resolve. She couldn't let it define her but contemplated the battle ahead. She climbed out of bed and meandered to her makeshift art space, her heart racing. Mixing colors, she felt the anticipation thrumming through her as she prepared to channel her emotions into vivid, tangible energy. Painting was more than a passion, it was a declaration of her freedom. Each brushstroke became a layer of exploration, a gradual peeling away of her insecurities. But amid the thrill of creation bubbled the anxiety of reality. Could she truly rise above the ridicule? What if Hawthorne crossed her path again? Shaking her head to dispel the dark thoughts, she picked up her brush and painted fiercely, allowing her soul to breathe into the forms emerging on the canvas. Day by day, she felt stronger, even as her vulnerability intertwined with newfound purpose. With each piece she completed, her confidence swelled. Clara sought more than depth in color, she was searching for resonance. She began to envision a larger picture, an exhibition of her work. The idea was both exhilarating and terrifying, a stark invitation to confront the very world that had belittled her. Could she be brave enough to present herself to the critics, the viewers, and worst of all the Hawthorns of society? Time passed quickly, and soon Clara found herself entrenched in the maze of the art world's workings. Networking was foreign to her instincts, bruising her pride a little more each day. Yet, with every sharing of her work, she tasted empowerment. Her work's reception sparked flickers of hope as supportive words replaced scornful laughter in her memory. While arranging a visit to a local gallery, Clara spotted a flyer for a prestigious art competition, the kind that could launch her career into the upper echelons of the art community. Her heart raced, a paradox of fear and excitement stirring within her. The deadline approached fast, but the thought of being judged by more people like Hawthorne sent her into a spiral of doubt. Yet, she realized that this moment and every brush of her paint on canvas was her chance to reclaim her dignity. That night, she sat at her workspace, confronting the looming fear head-on. As her brush met the canvas, the moment turned electric. Clara poured everything into her piece, a vivid representation of strength amidst chaos, of layering scars to form an intricate tapestry of resilience. Each color embodied not just what she felt but what she fought against, carving out her identity one stroke at a time. As she glanced at the clock, reality hit her, the competition was only days away. Could she capture the raw essence of her transformation in one frantic burst of creativity? Thoughts collided violently, but Clara's resolve tightened like a coiled spring. The time had come to face her inner turmoil and the judgment of that cruel laughter. With renewed determination, she set her mind to work. This was her life on display, a chance to stand tall, regardless of judgment, a chance to step out of the shadows of disdain. The path lay ahead, rugged yet inviting, and Clara knew that this was just the beginning of her dramatic revelation. And just as she felt the excitement swell within her chest, she heard a knock at the door, leading her to wonder, who could be here now, and what would they think of her art? Clara hesitated, her hand still just above the paint-splattered canvas. The knock echoed through her small studio, a sound that felt intrusive amidst her newfound focus. She couldn't help but grimace, a wave of apprehension washing over her. Was it Hawthorne, back to mock her once again? Taking a steadying breath, she moved toward the door, each step an exercise in overcoming uncertainty. Peering through the peephole, she recognized a familiar silhouette. Mia, her old friend from high school, stood at her doorstep, an enthusiastic smile gracing her face. Clara's heart swelled with dual emotions, joy at seeing a friend but tension at the burden of her present struggle. Opening the door, Clara was enveloped in a warm embrace. "You've been hiding, Clara. I had to come see what you were up to." "Just working on some pieces," Clara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Mia stepped inside and immediately noticed the vibrant strokes emerging from the canvas. Her eyes widened in delight. "This is incredible. Clara, it's so expressive. Do you have a show coming up?" Clara hesitated, her stomach twisting. Their essay competition," she managed to say, avoiding the pressure of explaining the entirety of her artistic journey. Mia's eyes sparkled with encouragement. "You have to at least submit something. You're too talented to keep all this to yourself. Remember what we talked about in art class? You always said you wanted your art to inspire." This could be it. Clara's insides churned. Inspiration? Wasn't she also inviting vulnerability? The haunting laughter of critics loomed over her, but the flicker of Mia's belief ignited her resolve. I don't know, Mia. What if they don't like it? What if they laugh? Mia grasped Clara's shoulders, her gaze earnest. Then they don't get it, Clara. But that doesn't mean it's not valid. Remember, art is subjective. What matters is how it makes you feel. You have to embrace this for yourself first. Clara swallowed hard. Her friend's words rang true but felt heavier as she thought of Hawthorne. She didn't want to falter this time. With every passing minute, Clara could feel the weight of the competition pressing down on her. Mia's presence seemed to open a door for Clara, gently nudging aside the remaining shadows of insecurity. She began to share her vision for the piece, her voice rising as she spoke of the myriad colors and layers she envisioned. Clara described how each stroke was not just art but a declaration, a manifesto of her struggles and triumphs layered upon one another. The day slipped into an evening of brainstorming, laughter, and unguarded creativity. Clara and Mia engaged in a spontaneous exchange of ideas, each one sparking a deeper understanding of what Clara wanted to manifest. As Clara sketched lightly on paper, she felt the tension within her begin to dissolve, replaced by a burgeoning excitement. Yet, amid this newfound camaraderie, Clara was struck by the question, would she truly have the courage to submit her art? Would she embrace her fears, take the plunge, and showcase her raw, unrefined truths to the unforgiving eyes of the art world? Time was ebbing away. The competition loomed closer, and she needed to make a decision fast. Her pulse quickened, each throb a reminder of the impending deadline. The wind outside rustled against the window panes, serving as an external cue for the storm within her. As Mia began to pack up her things to leave, Clara felt a surge of clarity. This moment was pivotal. She could either slip back into the shadows or step fully into the light. Mia, I think the moment hung in the air, heavy with expectation. What would she choose? What truth would she finally confront? How could she possibly translate her fears into the validation she craved from others? The words sat on the tip of her tongue, awaiting release. In the stillness, another knock echoed on the door, shaking Clara from her thoughts. The timing felt ominous, a symbolic interruption to her declaration. She glanced at Mia, whose eyes mirrored her anxiety. Should I get that? Clara asked, the weight of uncertainty falling between them. Absolutely, Mia replied, tension lining her smile, as if they both braced for whatever awaited them on the other side. With resolve tightening her chest, Clara took a step toward the door. She was about to confront not just a visitor, but potentially the frontier of her fears. What if this unexpected moment altered everything? What new challenge lay behind the door? As Clara turned the doorknob, her heart raced, a tumult of excitement and dread swirled within her. She opened the door to find a tall figure in a tailored suit, polished shoes reflecting the overhead light. It was Richard Hawthorne, the very critic who had once dismissed her art as childish and uninspired. Clara, he drawled, a smirk playing on his lips, I thought I might find you here. Heard you were working on something new. I must admit, I'm intrigued. His gaze flitted over the studio, a mixture of condescension and curiosity flashing in his eyes. Why are you here, Hawthorne? Clara's voice was steadier than she felt, an unexpected sense of defiance rising in her chest. Just wanted to see if you were ready to take the plunge. He stepped inside uninvited, his presence too determining, as if he had a right to critique the very air she breathed. You know, to enter that competition. I'm sure it won't be nearly as embarrassing as last time. Each word felt like a dagger aimed directly at her insecurities. But that moment, with Mia's pep talk resonating in her mind, ignited a flicker of rebellion. You know, it's not about impressing you, Richard. It's about expressing myself. He chuckled, leaning against her workbench, evaluating her sketches with a dismissive air. Expression is one thing, talent is another. Let us see if you're capable of real artistry this time. Clara clenched her fists, a storm brewing within. This man didn't just represent her past failures, he was a manifestation of all her doubts and fears. You don't get to dictate what art means to me, she spat back, surprising herself with her boldness. Touché. He raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in his expression. But let us be honest. You have a knack for, how do I put this? The overly sentimental. This could get interesting. His condescension wanted to tighten around her, suffocating her spirit. But as she took a step back, something shifted within Clara, a realization that she could either let him define her or take charge of her own narrative. With a sudden clarity, she decided she would turn his arrogance into motivation. Do you think your opinion matters? She questioned, her voice low but firm. You may have power in the art world, but I refuse to let your words hold me back this time. Hawthorne seemed taken aback, his expression morphing from playful to astonished. This is new. You've grown a spine. Interesting. But just remember, in this game, I hold the cards. Not anymore, Clara responded, her heart surging with a newfound certainty. She turned to Mia, who stood wide-eyed, a silent partner in her defense. Mia and I are working on something that's truly important to me. It's about time I put myself out there. That's what every amateur says, he retorted, crossing his arms. But as his eyes met her fiery determination, something flashed, a mixture of respect and annoyance. An amateur who is ready to redefine what art can be. So, if you're going to evaluate me, I hope you're prepared for something you didn't see coming. Clara felt invigorated. The sting of Hawthorne's words began to transform into fuel and energy, compelling her to dig deeper, to push the boundaries she had long accepted. As Hawthorne scoffed and prepared to retort, Clara quickly closed the door. A weight had lifted. She didn't just confront her critic, she shattered the illusions he had imposed on her. Clara, that was amazing. Mia burst out, her voice trembling with excitement. You really stood up to him. I did, Clara acknowledged, still feeling the pulse of adrenaline coursing through her. But a part of her remained uneasy. Had she merely exchanged one form of fear for another? Would the real challenge come when she laid her art bare for judgment? Resolute, she positioned herself in front of the canvas, brush in hand, the colors swirling around her in a chaotic dance. Slowly the image began to take shape, a powerful affirmation of her journey, her struggles, and her unexpected strength. However, as the artwork unfolded, so did questions she never considered. What if her story was too raw? What if it revealed more than she was ready to confront herself? The clock in the corner ticked ominously, its arms moving relentlessly toward the competition's deadline. And the wind outside howled, mirroring the clamor in Clara's mind, a realization that this was just the beginning of yet another battle. Striding back to the canvas, she felt the weight of her decisions pressing down on her chest. But there was no turning back now. She was on the verge of creating something real, something genuinely hers, and the road ahead was only going to get steeper. Would she have the strength to face the world and herself when the time came to show her art? Because there was more than just a competition at stake, it was about uncovering the truth of who she had become. Just then, as she laid down the first stroke, the studio door rattled once more, this time with a volume that sent shivers down her spine. Clara froze. Who could it be now, and what would they bring to her tumultuous journey? Clara's breath caught in her throat. The door continued to rattle, an insistent reminder that she wasn't alone in her struggle. She could turn around, face whoever was beyond that door, or she could choose to ignore it, retreating into the safety of her own world of paint and canvas. But that was the old Clara, the one who shied away from conflict. The new Clara felt the growing ember of defiance within her, urging her to confront whatever lay beyond her carefully curated space. With a firm grip on the brush, she hesitated for just a moment longer. This wasn't merely about art, this was about reclaiming her space, asserting her right to create, and standing firm in the face of anyone who dared challenge her. Whoever was at that door would have to reckon with her newfound resolve. Clara marched to the door, the pulsing rhythm of her heart sinking with each step. She swung it open, revealing a familiar face: Stella, her old art professor. The surprise on Stella's face quickly melted into a warm smile, instantly diffusing the tension in Clara's chest. "Clara. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd check in," Stella said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Your energy feels different. I like it." The genuine delight in Stella's voice struck a resonant chord within Clara. Here was someone who had nurtured her talent and believed in her potential, unlike Hawthorne, who fed on her insecurities. It was a reminder of what genuine support felt like. "I'm actually working on something for the upcoming competition," Clara confessed, her voice steady but laced with the anxiety of uncharted territory. "I don't know if it's good enough, though." Stella scrutinized her studio, her eyes glistening with intrigue. "Hawthorne was here, wasn't he? I just saw his sleek car parked outside." "You need to ignore that man's icy judgments. Art isn't about them, it's about you." Clara leaned against the doorframe, considering Stella's words. "I'm trying to focus on creating rather than letting him intimidate me, but it's a challenge." "Challenge is the essence of growth, Clara. Every brush stroke shapes you. Remember, your vulnerability is a strength." It was as if a light flicked on within Clara. She had spent so much time worrying about the perceptions of others that she had lost sight of the underlying purpose of her craft expression. Purpose fed conviction, and with that came a newfound clarity. "Would you like to see what I've done so far?" Clara's voice began to radiate confidence. Stella nodded enthusiastically, and Clara led her to the canvas. Once there, as the assessment began, she felt the weight of Hawthorne's taunts slip away. Instead, she sought feedback, eager to refine her vision with guidance reserved only for those willing to embrace vulnerability. "What I see here is not just art, it's your journey," Stella remarked, stepping closer, her eyes widening with each brush stroke. "It's raw, but that's what makes it powerful. Don't shy away from that emotion." Clara felt heat rush through her, a melting sensation, not of fear but of freedom. She was learning to embrace the messy parts of her narrative, to translate all her experiences, good and bad, into layers of color and form. With Stella's encouragement, she began to articulate her thoughts, experimenting with shadows and light, revealing a continuum of her truth. Days began to blur as Clara immersed herself in the process. Late into hours, the studio transformed into a sanctuary, each brushstroke pushing aside fears of judgment, pouring out her authenticity. Slowly, she learned to welcome the discomfort of her own exposure, forging a deeper connection to the unfolding canvas. But as her deadlines loomed closer, so did apprehension about that inevitable moment when she would have to face not only her completed artwork but also the specter of Richard Hawthorne's critique once more. The thought of standing before him with something tangible, something vulnerable, reignited her anxiety. As she began sketching a new layer to her piece, the sound of purposeful footsteps echoed outside her studio. Clara's heart raced. It was as if a drum heralded impending confrontation, shaking her unwavering focus. The stakes were rising, just like the tide. Would she be ready to reveal herself, or would doubts creep back in at the last moment? The door creaked open again, revealing not just a visitor, but a challenge that could shift everything she had built thus far. Clara straightened her back, paint-smeared hands poised with intent. Was she truly prepared to face what lay ahead? Each heartbeat resonated with uncertainty, but this time she was determined to stand her ground. As she turned to meet the new arrival, Clara felt the full weight of expectation trailing behind her. The moment was nearly here. The moment of truth loomed just before the horizon of her fears and expectations. Would she rise to the occasion, or would she falter? The answer beckoned like an unturned page, waiting for her next decisive chapter. Clara blinked as she turned to face the unmistakable figure at her door. Her heart dropped momentarily, surprise washing over her. It was not just anyone, it was Richard Hawthorne. The man who represented her greatest fears regarding artistic judgment stood before her, the overbearing pressure of his expectations palpable even from a distance. "Clara," he began, his voice smooth yet authoritative, carrying an air of condescension that curled around her thoughts like smoke. "I wanted to drop by and see how you're progressing. Word has it you're working on something for the competition." She took a breath, grounding herself in the moment. This was not the Clara who had previously wilted under his gaze, this was a woman who had started to embrace her artistic journey, ready to assert herself. There was an unyielding strength emerging within her, shaped by late nights of brushing canvas and layers of vulnerability. "Yes, I'm working on it," she replied, her tone steady. "In fact, I've been experimenting with some new techniques." She offered a faint smile, feeling the confidence radiate from her core. Hawthorne stepped further into the studio, his eyes scanning her workspace. "Interesting approach," he remarked dismissively. His gaze landed on her most recent canvas, the vibrant colors clashing in a chaotic yet intriguing harmony. "But I do hope this isn't the final iteration. It seems a bit unrefined." Clara felt a flicker of anger flare at his thinly veiled dismissal. Old Clara would have crumbled, finding validation in his critique. New Clara, however, bristled with defiance. She had come to value the authenticity of her work more than his opinion. "It's still in progress," she asserted, holding his gaze firmly. "I believe that art thrives in the exploration of imperfections." Hawthorne raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet skeptical. "That's a bold philosophy, Clara. But remember, juries often favor the polished over the raw. You risk diluting your chance with such a messy approach." Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear but from a burgeoning realization of her worth. He was trying to manipulate her insecurities again, but she'd endured enough of that to recognize it now. "Art is not simply about winning a competition," she said, "it's about expressing the truth of our experiences, my truth." "Ah, but audiences often struggle to grasp complex truths, don't you think?" His voice dripped with condescension, yet Clara could sense an undercurrent of curiosity. Perhaps he didn't expect her resistance. "Perhaps," she countered, a flicker of determination igniting in her chest. "But what matters is that the artist understands the message first. If I create authentically, some will resonate with it." "Admirable sentiment," he said, his expression shifting from amused skepticism to something harder to decipher. "But at the end of the day, art is still a business, Clara. You need to consider the professional implications of your approach." Glancing around her studio, Clara could feel the weight of her own agency beginning to settle. She was not just an artist, she was a professional, one who had the power to navigate her path. "Hawthorne," she said steadily, "I will create what speaks to me, and if that doesn't fit your checklist, then that's not failure on my part. It's simply a difference in vision." This challenge hung heavily in the air, crisp like the first chill of fall. Clara felt the tension of her declaration floating between them, a storm of energy challenging the old norms of his judgments. For a brief moment, the facade of Hawthorne's cold veneer seemed to crack. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if assessing the changes within her. "We shall see if that bravado holds when faced with actual critique," he said before exiting, leaving her studio pregnant with unresolved tension. Alone again, Clara took a deep breath, her mind racing with newfound clarity. The confrontation stirred within her a bubbling confidence that had long been dormant. However, the nagging voice of doubt whispered caution. Was she truly prepared to weather such storms? The competition loomed ahead, but so did the opportunity to showcase her growth. She turned to the canvas, determination fueling her brush. Each stroke became both a liberating act and a defiance against the dismissive judgments she had endured. As she labored on her piece, an undeniable truth struck her: this was her moment to either step beyond the shadows or remain shackled to the weight of someone else's perception. The air shimmered with possibility that pulsed in her fingertips, but with the deadline closing in, Clara couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Hawthorne's words were not the only obstacles she would face. Would her journey of self-discovery propel her into success, Or would external pressures drown her renewed spirit? In the silence that enveloped her studio, she gripped her brush tighter. The real test of her resolve was approaching, and she would either stand for her truth or watch it slip away. Her heart raced. The imminent clash awaited, and it was uncertain who would emerge victorious, the artist or the critic. Clara leaned over her canvas, the bristles of her brush a blur of intensity as they danced across the textured surface. Each color became a bold impression of her inner thoughts, each stroke was an assertion of her evolving self. The vibrancy of the hues was a reflection of the chaos within. She could feel the pressure of the competition creeping ever closer, but a fire burned beneath the surface, a fire ignited by her confrontation with Hawthorne. As she worked, her mind oscillated between anticipation and doubt. The conversations she had repeatedly held in her mind transformed into a mantra. Was she truly ready to navigate the world of high-stakes art? Was authenticity enough to outweigh the polished facade that others upheld? Despite the risks, she had found newfound courage, and that courage flavored her art with an urgency she had never known before. With each passing day, Clara pushed herself to explore new dimensions. At night, she would sit at her modest kitchen table, surrounded by sketches and ideas. She cloaked herself in a web of research, diving into artists who had ventured outside the confines of commercial acceptance. The works of expressionists and the rawness of abstract expressionism seeped into her brain until her own vision began melding with theirs. Her exploration brought to light an emotional vulnerability she had previously avoided. The messy, unkempt parts of her past offered rich territory for her art. This process was cathartic, unlocking pieces of herself she had left dormant for too long. The canvas became a site of reclamation, where her fears could be fully realized and ultimately transformed into art. A week later, Clara stood in front of the mirror, a reflection that was beginning to resonate with her newfound identity. Her clothes were splattered with paint, a badge of her dedication. With a slight adjustment to her hair and the hint of a smile, she felt a braver version of herself emerging. An old voice crept into her mind, reminding her of Hawthorne's doubts. Yet, each time it rose, she silenced it with a firm statement of her intentions to embrace artistry over acceptance. On the day of the competition's final submission, she stood in her studio as the sun streamed through, illuminating the masterpiece she had created. The canvas, chaotic yet unified, embodied her truth. It hanging proudly before her like a warrior awaiting battle, willing to confront the world. In those sacred moments, a growing anticipation swept over her. She understood that this was not just about judgment, it was about taking the step out of the cage she had been placed in by others, including herself. And yet, a deep-seated fear nagged at her. What if this piece was not received well? What if Hawthorne's words echoed back in the form of critiques that crushed her spirit? As if the universe conspired to fuel her uncertainty, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was an invite to a pre-competition exhibition hosted by local elites, an opportunity for mingling and networking, a chance to showcase her work outside of traditional gates. The moment hung before her, teetering between possibility and dread. A sinking feeling overtook her. Was she prepared to expose herself to those who often preferred polished veneers over raw truths? Clara's heart raced as she thumbed through the details, feeling the conflict within her grow. It was an invitation to let her defenses down in front of those who could judge her the most harshly. The stakes felt higher than ever. What she didn't know was that taking this step could either solidify her newfound growth or unravel it completely. She held her breath, the weight of the decision pressing down. Walking into the unknown could either crown her effort with validation or drown her spirit in rejection. Would she take the leap or retreat back into her safety net? The answer twinkled on the horizon while shadows of doubt loomed larger than ever, and Clara realized, the moment for true revelation was fast approaching, and the canvas was now both her refuge and battlefield. Clara stared at the screen, her heart thundering with the weight of the choice before her. The invitation loomed large in her mind, a maroon ticket to potential validation tainted with the sting of vulnerability. Around her, the studio pulsed with the energy of her creation, a symphony of chaos that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. It was only a matter of moments until she made a decision that could jumpstart her career or lead to a complete unraveling. She took a deep breath, trying to dispel the fear that gripped her like a vice. Yet doubt clawed at her, whispering suggestive phrases that framed her confidence as naivete. What if she wasn't ready? What if she faltered under the critical eye of art elites who thrived on polished perfection, people who undoubtedly considered her as just a housekeeper taking a misguided shot at becoming an artist? The thought burned inside her, a reminder of the space she occupied as a cleaner, worried she would never lose that title even if she managed to create something beautiful. Pushing those thoughts aside, she grabbed a sketchbook and a charcoal pencil, ready to visualize the anxiety swirling inside her. Each stroke was a physical manifestation of her conflict. A housekeeper's hands wielded the tools of her expression now, and the thought bubbled with irony. In her mind, she confronted the ghost of Hawthorne, his dismissive gaze lingering just beyond the edge of her reality. Hadn't he been right, in a way? Would society ever see her as more? With each mark on the page, she charted the path of her emotions. She penned the harsh realities she feared: judgment, ridicule, the fear of failure. For weeks, she had used her art to confront the world, shedding layers of herself that felt dormant, but now those layers threatened to envelop her once more. What a cruel joke it seemed. Perhaps the greatest battle she faced was not the art world but the wars within her soul. Clara forced herself to return to the present. She glanced at the clock, realizing time was scarce. With shaky hands, she typed a reply to the exhibition invitation. Each letter felt like a commitment to herself, a promise she was finally making to breach the boundaries of fear. Perhaps, she pondered, those who revered artistry could also see merit in authenticity. Wasn't truth the ultimate form of art? But doubt surged anew. What if authenticity was met with disdain? What if her raw pieces, so filled with emotional blood and sweat, fell flat before an elite audience used to facades? The conflict ignited a yearning for reassurance. Clara picked up her phone and scrolled through social media, searching for insight or inspiration. She stumbled upon a post from a fellow artist, someone she admired who spoke openly about her own struggles with vulnerability. It struck a chord, a connection that pulsed with rawness. Maybe there was strength found in shared imperfections, a vulnerability that resonated louder than the polished. Clara's heart raced. There it was, a flicker of understanding. Just as she had explored the depths of her art, she could extend that inquiry to the emotional engagement of her audience. Could she create an art piece that cast away the masks, one that cupped her insecurities and foibles gently in the light? She was more than a housekeeper, her art was more than a hobby. With newfound resolve, she hit send on the RSVP. Yes, she would go to the exhibition. No retreat now. The fire that had ignited in her chest turned into a smoldering determination. As the evening approached, she dressed meticulously, each article of clothing curated to express authenticity rather than compromise. Clara placed her masterpiece at the forefront, a stark reminder that she had something worthwhile to offer. Self-empowerment radiated from her skin. Stepping outside, she was greeted by an unexpected chill, even the air felt heavy with the weight of possibility. Tonight would be a reckoning. As she approached the venue, each exhale sent ripples of anticipation through her core. The moment was finally here, and she sensed something monumental awaited her, a collision of dreams and fears. Little did she know, she was about to encounter more than just art enthusiasts. The true challenge awaited her in the form of an unexpected adversary. Would she find strength in her art, or would the struggle threaten to consume her? As Clara stepped through the gallery doors, the ambience shifted around her. The low murmur of conversations melded with the faint sound of jazz cascading through the space, an orchestrated backdrop to the parade of polished professionals gliding gracefully past her. Each figure she observed, adorned in tailored suits and evening gowns, seemed expertly curated for this very moment. She felt like an interloper in a world she had only just begun to breach. The initial wave of anxiety surged again, wrapping around her throat like a tight necklace. But she refused to yield. With clenched fists, she pushed through, recalling the resolve that had ignited within her only hours earlier. The exhibition was her stage, a platform to unveil layers of herself once hidden. Her heart raced as she sought out her piece, standing resolutely amongst the other artworks, a cacophony of textures, colors, and emotions. Her charcoal rendering, raw and intensely personal, captured an unguarded moment of herself, a figure kneeling amidst a shower of disjointed shapes representing her fears and desires. She had summoned vulnerability, and now it stared back at her, challenging her to embrace it fully. Just then, a well-coiffed man approached her, distinctly out of place with a half-empty flute of champagne in hand. His gaze swept over her art, but it was her that seemed to catch his attention next. Clara steeled herself, knowing his type, another privileged onlooker who might feel entitled to dismiss her with scorn. "Interesting piece," he remarked, sarcasm woven easily into his tone. "You really went all out on the air chaos of life, didn't you? Quite the leap for someone who's accustomed to cleaning up after others." The sting of his words took root somewhere deep, igniting a mix of embarrassment and indignation within her. This was not merely an attack on her art but on her very identity. Clara felt the familiar surge of doubt prickling at the edges of her self-worth, threatening to drain the pride she had fought so hard to cultivate. Responding with restraint, Clara chose to focus instead on her painting. This piece represents struggle and authenticity, things we often overlook in pursuit of perfection. Each word became a small dagger, piercing through the veneer this man wore like armor. His amusement morphed into confusion. "Authenticity? Is that what this is?" He chuckled mockingly, but Clara sensed her spirit rising like a phoenix amidst ash. Here was someone who represented all her fears, yet as she engaged, she became acutely aware of the strength she derived from her experience, her story woven into every stroke of her brush. The tension shifted as her voice picked up cadence, fueled by passion. "Yes, it is. It reflects the moments where we feel lost but choose to reveal our truth. Not everyone hides behind the facade of wealth or privilege." As the words spilled from her, she felt the hot breath of confidence fill her lungs. She understood now. She could wield her truth like a weapon. Clara continued, emboldened, drawing a crowd that began to gather around her. "This art isn't just for the elite. It speaks to anyone tired of masks, anyone looking to connect beyond the superficial." The eyes of the audience flared, some nodding in agreement, others shocked by her audacity. In a rush of momentum, she inferred even deeper truths to share with her newfound audience. Perhaps there was beauty in imperfection, perhaps she could break down barriers by embracing her reality. Something inside her shifted, now blooming greater than herself. She was not just defending her art, she was reclaiming her identity. The queries and confrontations of the elite had transformed into moments of empowerment. The adversarial energy she had expected turned to curiosity. Was it possible she was more than just her past? Just as the atmosphere began to sizzle with electric potential, an unexpected wave of applause erupted from the gallery patrons behind her. Clara couldn't suppress the rising warmth of affirmation swelling in her chest. The tide had shifted. Ones made by misunderstanding had now morphed into appreciation, but before she could revel in the victory, she noticed that same man lingering nearby, an unsettling glint of mischief in his eyes. If his intention had been to belittle her, she could sense it brewing anew. What other challenges remained for her to uncover, lurking beneath the surface of her triumph? For Clara, this was only the beginning. A realization sparked within her. The true battle was still pending, not just against the critics but with the haunting shadows of her own insecurities. Would she stand resilient against the weight of external judgment, or would the true test lie in her pursuit of self-acceptance amidst the cacophony? Clara stood at the center of the gallery, immersed in a maelstrom of swirling emotions that enveloped her with each glance thrown her way. The applause was affirming, yet vulnerable. Each echoing clap felt like a rise in pressure, summoning the strongest part of her resolve to the forefront. The man who had mocked her art had been defeated, but as his eyes glinted with renewed disdain, she sensed another wave of judgment approaching. "Impressive how passionately you speak, Clara," he said, with an eyebrow raised, "but maybe you should keep your story trite rather than risking another rambling speech of self-congratulation." Her heart raced, but it wasn't from fear. A strange sense of empowerment surged through her. It was true that the echoes of his previous words and the shadows of past doubts had a way of haunting her. She could either let them dictate her reality or reshape them in a way that illuminated her strength. Only she had the power to choose. No story is too trite if it is authentically felt, Clara asserted, meeting his gaze steadily. Perhaps your privilege blinds you to the beauty in transparent vulnerability. She felt astonished by her own fortitude, standing resolutely against the elitism she once thought would drown her. The crowd simmered with anticipation, now absorbing the gravity of her words. Clara had stepped into the arena of her truth, a willingness to let her art and voice unite for her cause. No longer was she a mere housekeeper caught beneath the weight of another's opinions. Now, she was an artist, unafraid to display her identity and the journey it reflected. Art should evoke feelings, not merely be displayed for the affluent to critique, she continued, her voice firm but imbued with grace. The chaos in my work is the complexity of life we often overlook in polished galleries. The murmurs began to shift, spectators nodding, starting to resonate with the underlying message. Clara's bravery felt like a transformation solidifying before her own eyes. Each daring word propelled her further in overcoming the humiliation she once felt, and the ghost of Arthur Hawthorne shrank into the distance. His dismissive expression seemed to falter as the faces around her lit up with enthusiasm, engaging with her sincerity. In that remarkable moment, she realized she hadn't just conquered her fears of judgment, she had established a profound connection with the people witnessing her evolution. The audience was more than just patrons, they were allies, sharing in the tenacity of her story. Clara began to encapsulate this experience in her artwork, layered emotions on canvas reimagined into conversations. Encouraged by their engagement, she began to explain her piece in detail, revealing the color's symbolism, each brushstroke a reflection of her journey from shame to empowerment. The vibrant chaos, once mere brushwork, morphed into a powerful tapestry of struggle and victory, intertwining her identity with that of others navigating life's unpredictability. Each vivid layer symbolizes not only my experiences but those who have taught me the beauty of authenticity, she declared, feeling the deep satisfaction coursing through her like a river. Art transcends identity, tying us together regardless of our circumstances. Applause erupted once more, though this time it felt different. It resonated in Clara's bones, solid and warm. In that moment, she understood what she had truly accomplished. She had forged not only her identity but found her place within the realm of artistry and authenticity. As the night drew to a close, Clara gripped the edge of her canvas, a renewed drive flowing through her like never before. The criticisms that once haunted her were now merely distant echoes compared to the mountain she had triumphantly climbed. She had proven herself, not only to the world but to herself. The final submission of her art piece for the competition was merely the next step in her journey. With each hurdle she faced, Clara had grown, her confidence illuminated from within, filled with a purpose that could no longer be stifled. This wasn't just the moment of unveiling her art, it signified her transformation from a housekeeper to an artist, embracing the layers of her identity. Clara's heart swelled with pride, recognizing that she had achieved something admirable. She had conquered the chaos that once threatened to engulf her, and the world could now see her for who she truly was. As Clara stepped out into the brisk night air, she breathed deeply, feeling an ecstatic rush of satisfaction and fulfillment. All the emotions she had encountered, the fears, the insecurities, the lessons, had culminated into something profoundly beautiful. She was not just an artist, she was a testament to resilience, layered like the artwork she had created. This reality was hers to own, it was no longer defined by others. Clara smiled, knowing this was just the beginning, a powerful crescendo of her story that would resonate for years to come. She had arrived, now, she would thrive, and now, to you, the audience, this is the moment to recognize your journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is essential. Comment your reactions and theories about Clara's transformation, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the message of personal growth, don't wait even one more second to share.